Imagine standing in the glow of words that feel like promises, feeling the warmth of someone's declarations of love, only to discover later that those words were empty echoes, beautiful sounds with no weight behind them. Fake love has a way of disguising itself as something real, dressing up in sweet phrases flattery and charm, while hiding the absence of true care, commitment, and respect. It feels intoxicating at first because words have power, they stir hope, desire, and the illusion of connection. But slowly, a subtle dissonance begins to emerge: actions that don't match the words, gestures that lack meaning, and a growing unease in the pit of your stomach. Words alone cannot build trust or intimacy. They cannot replace sincerity. And the cruelest part is how seductive fake love can be, convincing you to stay even when every fiber of your being senses that something essential is missing. The illusion of words is one of the most insidious aspects of fake love because it preys on our deepest human desire to feel seen, heard, and cherished. Words are powerful. They can uplift, inspire, and convey the most intimate emotions. When someone speaks of love, promises devotion, or expresses care in eloquent phrases, the heart is naturally inclined to trust them. The problem arises when these words are not anchored in genuine feeling or consistent action. In fake love, words serve as a veneer, a carefully constructed facade designed to create the appearance of affection without the substance to back it up. This creates an illusion of intimacy, a sense of connection that feels real in the moment, but is ultimately hollow. It is a masterful deception because humans are wired to respond to verbal affirmation. Hearing, "I love you," "you mean everything to me," or "I'll never leave you," triggers hope, attachment, and a sense of security, even when these statements are not rooted in truth. The illusion is further reinforced by the subtle ways in which language can manipulate perception. Someone practicing fake love may use words selectively, emphasizing emotional highs while avoiding honesty or accountability in areas that matter. Compliments are exaggerated, apologies are carefully phrased to elicit forgiveness without genuine remorse, and promises are made with the intent to pacify or placate rather than to build trust. Over time, the repeated exposure to these words creates a cognitive bias in the recipient. You begin to believe in the love that is being spoken of because your mind seeks coherence between what you hear and what you hope is real. Even in the presence of contradictory behavior, the allure of beautifully packaged language can overshadow the inconsistencies, delaying recognition of the truth. The heart often wants to believe, and words provide the perfect camouflage. This illusion is particularly potent because it taps into emotional vulnerability. Love is a state in which individuals are naturally open, empathetic, and trusting. Fake love exploits these traits, using words to gain access to the inner world of the other person. When someone speaks lovingly, the recipient often lowers their guard, sharing thoughts, dreams, and vulnerabilities that they might otherwise protect. This emotional exposure is precisely what makes fake love so dangerous. The words create a false sense of safety, masking the absence of genuine care or reciprocity. Over time, the illusion can become addictive, as the heart continues to chase the emotional highs created by promises and flattery, even when actions consistently fail to align with the spoken affection. Another critical dimension of the illusion of words is the way it blurs perception and reality. When someone repeatedly tells you that you are loved, cherished, or irreplaceable, it can create a cognitive dissonance when their behavior contradicts those statements. The mind struggles to reconcile the emotional attachment fostered by language with the reality of actions that betray or neglect. This dissonance can lead to confusion, self-doubt, and rationalization as you search for explanations that preserve the narrative of love. You might convince yourself that inconsistencies are temporary, that your partner is going through a difficult time, or that the love they profess is real even if it is imperfectly expressed. The illusion of words in this way is not just a matter of hearing something untrue, it actively shapes perception, influencing the way you interpret behavior, gauge emotional safety, and maintain hope in the relationship. The danger of this illusion is amplified when it is sustained over time. Short-term deception can be painful but identifiable, yet fake love that relies on words without action over weeks, months, or years creates a complex emotional entanglement. You become invested emotionally and psychologically in the narrative constructed by the words. Trust is extended based on what is promised verbally, not what is demonstrated. Emotional energy is spent nurturing a relationship that is not grounded in reality. This prolonged exposure not only deepens attachment, but also increases vulnerability to manipulation, as the heart has been conditioned to associate verbal affirmation with love, even in the absence of genuine behavior. The more you invest, the harder it becomes to disentangle from the illusion. Finally, the illusion of words serves as a stark reminder of the distinction between language and authenticity. Words alone cannot convey love if they are not accompanied by consistent, meaningful actions. Love is more than statements, is demonstrated in care, attention, sacrifice, respect, and shared responsibility. Without these foundations, words become empty vessels, beautiful, persuasive, and seductive, but ultimately devoid of true emotional weight. The person on the receiving end may feel drawn in, validated, or momentarily comforted, but the illusion cannot withstand the test of reality over time. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step toward discernment, understanding that language can be weaponized, that verbal affection is not a guarantee of genuine emotion, and that true love is proven through consistency, integrity, and action. The illusion of words and fake love is a profound and dangerous phenomenon because it preys on hope, trust, and emotional openness. It can create the sensation of intimacy and devotion where none truly exists, leaving the heart vulnerable and the mind in conflict. Understanding this deception is critical for developing the discernment necessary to identify authenticity, protect emotional well-being, and cultivate relationships rooted in truth rather than beautiful but empty language. The contrast between actions and words is one of the clearest indicators of fake love, because love is fundamentally demonstrated through consistent behavior rather than verbal declarations alone. Words can be persuasive, comforting, or seductive, but they are only meaningful when aligned with tangible actions that reflect care, commitment, and respect. In relationships, the most reliable measure of love is what someone actually does, not what they say. When words promise devotion, but actions fail to follow, a disconnect emerges that can create confusion, self-doubt, and emotional turbulence. Fake love thrives in this gap, exploiting the human tendency to give credibility to language and to hope that intentions will eventually align with promises. Over time, repeated experiences of this disconnect erode trust, destabilize emotional security, and force the heart to confront the painful reality that love without action is hollow. The discrepancy between words and actions often starts subtly. Someone may consistently express affection verbally, offering compliments, declarations of love, or sweet reassurances, but their behavior may lack follow-through. They might fail to show up when needed, disregard boundaries, neglect responsibilities within the relationship, or prioritize their own interests above yours. These small, repeated inconsistencies accumulate over time, creating a pattern that reveals the absence of genuine care. The challenge lies in the fact that words can mask these omissions, creating a temporary sense of security and intimacy. A person may continue to hope, rationalize, and excuse behavior because the verbal affirmations feel real, even as the reality of their actions suggests otherwise. The tension between language and behavior becomes a persistent source of internal conflict. This gap between words and actions also functions as a form of emotional manipulation. Fake love often relies on the seductive power of speech to maintain control, evoke affection, or suppress doubt. Someone may say the right things at the right moments. I love you. You're my everything. I'll always be here, but fail to demonstrate reliability, empathy, or accountability. These verbal assurances serve to placate, distract, or manipulate emotions, creating a sense of closeness that is not reciprocated through meaningful deeds. In this way, words can act as a mask for absence, neglect, or even deceit, allowing the individual to appear loving without committing to the responsibilities that love entails. The longer this dynamic persists, the more it erodes the capacity to discern authentic affection, because the heart becomes conditioned to accept verbal affirmations as sufficient proof of love. The emotional impact of this discrepancy is profound. Human beings are wired to respond to both verbal and behavioral cues, and when they conflict, it creates cognitive and emotional dissonance. You may feel loved when words are spoken, yet simultaneously sense unease or disappointment when actions do not match those words. This dissonance can produce self-doubt as you question your own perceptions and wonder if you are misinterpreting intentions. It can also foster denial as you cling to verbal reassurances while overlooking repeated behavioral evidence that contradicts them. Over time, this internal conflict can destabilize self-confidence, making it difficult to trust not only the other person but also your own judgment in evaluating relationships. Another aspect of the gap between actions and words is the way it shapes expectations. When someone consistently communicates love verbally without following through in action, it can create a warped understanding of what constitutes genuine affection. You may begin to prioritize verbal affirmation over consistency, normalizing behavior that is inadequate or even harmful. The mind begins to associate love primarily with language rather than with respect, support, or reliability. This shift in perception makes it easier for fake love to continue undetected, as the emotional investment remains tied to the beauty of words rather than the evidence of authenticity. It also complicates future relationships, as the bar for evaluating sincerity may become skewed by prior experiences with verbal deception. The disconnect between actions and words is also a reflection of emotional irresponsibility. In genuine love, words are commitments that are reinforced through actions. Promises are honored, care is demonstrated, and emotional needs are actively considered. Fake love, by contrast, prioritizes the appearance of affection over its substance. This prioritization often stems from selfishness, immaturity, or manipulation, with little regard for the emotional well-being of the other person. The result is a dynamic where one partner is emotionally invested while the other maintains a facade, using words as a tool to elicit attachment and compliance without contributing meaningfully to the relational bond. Over time, the imbalance becomes increasingly apparent, exposing the hollowness of verbal expressions when unaccompanied by authentic actions. Recognizing the importance of actions over words is critical for developing discernment in relationships. While words can initiate connection and convey intention, they must be tested against consistent behavior. True love manifests not in what is said, but in what is done, in acts of care, in presence, in reliability, and in responsiveness to emotional needs. Actions create the trust and security that words alone cannot provide. They serve as the proof of commitment, the evidence that love is not merely performative but genuine and sustaining. Understanding this distinction is essential to protecting oneself from fake love, cultivating authentic connections, and valuing relationships that demonstrate care through tangible, consistent behaviors rather than empty declarations. The gap between words and actions is, therefore, one of the most revealing aspects of fake love. It exposes the difference between performance and reality, between appearance and truth, and between manipulation and genuine affection. By attuning to this discrepancy, one can begin to navigate relationships with clarity, recognize patterns of inauthenticity, and prioritize love that is proven through action rather than merely spoken. Emotional manipulation is one of the most insidious characteristics of fake love because it preys on vulnerability, trust, and the innate human desire for connection. Unlike genuine love, which nurtures, supports, and fosters growth, fake love often uses emotional tactics to control, influence, or destabilize the other person for the benefit of the one giving it. This manipulation is subtle, often wrapped in words of affection, concern, or promise, creating a confusing mix of love and harm. The person being manipulated is frequently left questioning their own feelings, actions, or perceptions because the love they receive is not consistent or rooted in sincerity. Emotional manipulation thrives in the tension between hope and fear, between desire for closeness and awareness that something essential is missing. It exploits the natural vulnerability that comes with trust, using it as a lever to maintain influence and control without ever truly committing to the well-being of the other person. Fake love often leverages words to create dependency. The manipulator understands the power of verbal affirmation and reassurance to create attachment. They may express love, concern, or commitment in a way that feels urgent, overwhelming, or emotionally compelling, drawing the recipient into a heightened state of emotional investment. These expressions are not necessarily false in tone. They may evoke genuine emotional reactions, but they are strategically deployed to influence behavior. A person might be persuaded to overlook inconsistencies, forgive repeated slights, or prioritize the relationship above their own needs because the words suggest care, devotion, or indispensability. Over time, this creates a cycle of dependency where emotional well-being becomes intertwined with the manipulator's approval or attention, making it increasingly difficult to separate genuine affection from strategic influence. Guilt is another powerful tool in the arsenal of emotional manipulation within fake love. The manipulator may frame situations in a way that assigns blame, highlights perceived inadequacies, or leverages past mistakes to control present behavior. They may say, either directly or subtly, that the other person is responsible for the success or failure of the relationship, for the emotional state of the manipulator, or for maintaining harmony. This creates an unhealthy sense of responsibility where the manipulated individual feels compelled to act in ways that preserve the illusion of love, even at the expense of personal boundaries, values, or emotional well-being. Guilt becomes a mechanism for compliance, masking manipulation as concern or affection, and it reinforces the power imbalance inherent in fake love. Emotional manipulation also thrives on inconsistency, creating a push and pull dynamic that destabilizes the recipient. In fake love, moments of warmth, attention, or affection are interspersed with neglect, criticism, or distance, creating a cycle of hope and disappointment. The heart becomes conditioned to seek approval, affection, or validation, even when it is irregular or unreliable. This intermittent reinforcement mirrors the psychological patterns of addiction. The unpredictability of care or attention makes the moments of perceived love feel intensely significant, while the absence creates anxiety, doubt, and an urgent desire to restore connection. The manipulated person is left in a state of perpetual uncertainty, unsure whether they are loved, valued, or appreciated, but compelled to invest more emotional energy in an attempt to gain affirmation. The manipulator's tactics often extend to controlling perception and reality. Fake love can involve gaslighting, selective honesty, or the framing of narratives in a way that questions the other person's memory, interpretation, or judgment. By undermining confidence in one's own perceptions, the manipulator maintains authority over the emotional narrative, creating confusion and reinforcing reliance on their words and approval. This form of manipulation is particularly damaging because it erodes self-trust, leaving the recipient vulnerable to further deception. When emotional experience is constantly questioned or reframed, it becomes difficult to discern authenticity from performance, reality from illusion, and genuine affection from strategic influence. Another dimension of emotional manipulation in fake love is the exploitation of vulnerability for personal gain. Manipulators often know the specific fears, insecurities, or desires of the person they target and use this knowledge to craft language, promises, or behaviors that elicit attachment. They may offer reassurance at critical moments, withdraw affection when displeased, or frame actions in a way that appears caring but serves primarily to reinforce dependence. This exploitation is subtle because it is intertwined with moments of apparent kindness, making it difficult to distinguish between genuine concern and calculated manipulation. The emotional weight of love, its intensity, intimacy, and promise, is weaponized, creating a dynamic where one person's well-being is secondary to the manipulator's control and advantage. Understanding emotional manipulation in fake love is critical because it allows one to recognize patterns, reclaim autonomy, and protect emotional integrity. It requires attentiveness to inconsistencies between words and actions, sensitivity to cycles of control and dependence, and awareness of how guilt, fear, and hope are being leveraged. Emotional manipulation is not merely a matter of miscommunication or misunderstanding. It is an intentional distortion of emotional reality that undermines trust, diminishes self-confidence, and exploits the natural human desire for love and connection. Recognizing these patterns provides clarity, enabling the heart to distinguish between authenticity and performance, genuine affection and strategic influence, and love that nurtures versus love that deceives. The power of emotional manipulation in fake love lies in its ability to blur boundaries, distort perception, and exploit vulnerability. It creates a relationship in which the heart is engaged, but the mind is in conflict, torn between hope and doubt, trust and suspicion. By examining the dynamics of manipulation through dependency, guilt, inconsistency, control, and exploitation, it becomes possible to understand the mechanisms of fake love and to cultivate discernment. Awareness of these patterns is the first step in breaking free from deception, reclaiming emotional autonomy, and seeking connections rooted in authenticity rather than words engineered to control. Self-deception and denial are central mechanisms that allow fake love to persist, often longer than it should, because the mind and heart are both eager to believe in connection and affection, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Human beings have an extraordinary capacity to rationalize excuse and reinterpret behavior to preserve hope and emotional investment. When someone expresses words of love without consistent actions, or when actions repeatedly contradict verbal promises, the natural tendency is to downplay or reinterpret these inconsistencies rather than confront the painful reality. This self-deception acts as a protective mechanism, shielding the heart from immediate heartbreak, while simultaneously allowing the relationship to continue on a foundation that may be fundamentally flawed. It is a subtle but powerful form of denial, where the desire for love overrides objective assessment of authenticity. At the core of this phenomenon is the human need for belonging and validation. Love is not just an emotion, it is a social and psychological necessity. When someone claims affection, our brains are wired to respond favorably, seeking attachment, security, and reassurance. This wiring creates a vulnerability that fake love exploits. The recipient, wanting desperately to believe in the relationship, often chooses to focus on the moments of verbal affirmation or perceived intimacy while minimizing or rationalizing behaviors that indicate insincerity. A partner's repeated lateness, neglect, or disregard for boundaries may be explained away as stress, distraction, or a temporary lapse in judgment, rather than signs of a deeper disconnect. In this way, self-deception allows the mind to maintain a narrative of love even in the presence of contradictory evidence. Denial often manifests as selective attention and memory. People may unconsciously filter experiences to highlight the affirmations of love while downplaying or forgetting instances that reveal its absence. Compliments, declarations of affection, and brief moments of attention are remembered vividly and imbued with outsized significance, while dismissive or harmful behavior is rationalized or minimized. This selective focus perpetuates the illusion of love, reinforcing emotional investment and delaying recognition of the reality that the love being offered is conditional, performative, or entirely absent. The mind, in effect, becomes complicit in sustaining the deception, constructing a version of the relationship that aligns with hope rather than fact. Self-deception is also reinforced by fear of loneliness, fear of loss, and fear of facing emotional pain. Accepting that love is fake is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is an emotional reckoning that confronts the heart with disappointment, grief, and vulnerability. To avoid this discomfort, the mind and heart may engage in denial, convincing themselves that inconsistency is temporary, that the other person will change, or that the relationship's imperfections are acceptable and normal. This avoidance prolongs exposure to fake love because acknowledging the truth would necessitate action, setting boundaries, confronting the other person, or ending the relationship. The fear of this confrontation creates a psychological inertia where staying in the illusion feels safer than facing reality. Cognitive dissonance plays a crucial role in sustaining self-deception and denial. When actions and words are misaligned, the mind experiences tension between what it wants to believe and what it observes. Resolving this tension often involves altering perception rather than altering reality. The brain may reinterpret behavior, invent excuses, or downplay negative experiences to reduce discomfort. For example, if someone repeatedly says, "I love you," but fails to support you in meaningful ways, you might tell yourself that their love is expressed differently or that your expectations are unreasonable. This rationalization alleviates immediate emotional distress, but reinforces the pattern of self-deception, allowing the relationship to continue despite the lack of genuine love. Another dimension of self-deception in fake love is the projection of desire onto the other person. People often see in their partners the qualities they hope for rather than the qualities that are truly present. Idealization is a form of denial, where the mind constructs a version of the person that aligns with emotional needs and fantasies. This projection amplifies the illusion of love, creating emotional attachment to a version of the person that does not exist in reality. When behaviors contradict the idealized image, the mind frequently resolves the conflict through rationalization, insisting that the inconsistencies are temporary or situational rather than fundamental. The result is prolonged emotional investment in a love that is largely imagined rather than real. The consequences of sustained self-deception and denial are significant. Emotional energy, time, and vulnerability are invested in relationships that do not provide reciprocity or genuine care. Trust becomes eroded not only in the other person, but also in one's own ability to discern authenticity. Emotional pain accumulates over time, often leading to a deeper, more difficult confrontation with reality when the illusion inevitably collapses. The heart must reconcile the dissonance between what was believed and what was true, a process that is often more painful because of the years of denial and rationalization that preceded it. Understanding self-deception and denial is crucial for breaking free from fake love. Recognizing how the mind excuses, rationalizes, and selectively perceives behavior allows one to cultivate awareness, challenge rationalizations, and confront uncomfortable truths. It is a process of retraining perception to align with reality, not desire, and developing the courage to act in accordance with that awareness. By acknowledging patterns of denial, one can begin to reclaim emotional clarity, protect vulnerability, and seek relationships grounded in authenticity rather than sustained by hope, rationalization, or illusion. The pain of realizing that love was fake is one of the most profound and disorienting experiences a person can endure. Love is not merely an emotion, it is a deeply rooted human need, intertwined with trust, hope, and vulnerability. When someone discovers that the love they believed in was insincere, the emotional impact is intense and multifaceted, affecting both heart and mind. The heartbreak is amplified because it is not just the loss of affection that stings, but also the shattering of trust, the dismantling of expectations, and the recognition that time, energy, and emotional investment have been placed in something that was never genuine. It is a collision between reality and the narrative one has held, a moment where the heart realizes that it has been deceived, often by the very person it chose to trust most deeply. The first layer of this pain is the sense of betrayal. Fake love is inherently a betrayal of trust because trust is extended with the assumption of sincerity, care, and mutual respect. When words and gestures of affection turn out to be hollow, the heart experiences a profound sense of violation. This betrayal is particularly painful because it comes from someone who was granted intimate access to emotions, thoughts, and vulnerabilities. The person who believed in the love feels exposed and raw, as if the very openness that defined the relationship has been used against them. Betrayal in this context is not just about deception, it is the exploitation of vulnerability, which leaves an emotional scar that can persist long after the relationship has ended. Alongside betrayal comes a wave of grief. The realization of fake love triggers mourning for the connection one thought existed, the dreams that were tied to the relationship, and the imagined future that will never materialize. This grief is compounded by the cognitive dissonance of having invested so much in something that was never authentic. Memories, promises, and experiences that once brought comfort are now tinged with pain, as each moment is reinterpreted in light of the truth. The heart grieves not only the person, but also the illusion itself, the hope and trust that were cultivated over time and ultimately exploited. This form of grief is complex, as it encompasses both loss and betrayal simultaneously. Self-doubt is another significant consequence of recognizing fake love. When someone has been emotionally deceived, it is natural to question personal judgment, intuition, and ability to discern authenticity. One may wonder how the deception went unnoticed for so long, or why the red flags were ignored. This self-scrutiny can lead to a period of insecurity, where trust in others and even in one's own perceptions is shaken. The pain of fake love is not only directed outward, toward the person who deceived, but also inward, toward the self, as one grapples with feelings of vulnerability and perceived failure in evaluating character and intentions. The experience often demands a painful reconciliation with the fact that being deceived does not equate to weakness, but rather is a testament to openness and emotional courage. The emotional turbulence caused by fake love also includes anger and frustration. Once the illusion is lifted, it is common to feel intense irritation at the deceit and the time lost in the relationship. Anger arises from the recognition of manipulation, the empty promises, and the emotional energy that was invested in a connection that was never genuine. This anger, while painful, is also a natural and necessary response, signaling the mind and heart that boundaries have been crossed and that healing requires acknowledgement of wrongdoing. It is part of the process of reclaiming personal power, understanding the disparity between appearance and reality, and refusing to remain entangled in the illusion. The lingering effects of this realization extend beyond immediate emotional pain. Fake love leaves an imprint on one's perception of relationships, trust, and vulnerability. People often approach subsequent connections with caution, skepticism, or guardedness, wary of repeating the experience. While this caution can serve as a protective mechanism, it can also complicate the capacity to engage fully and openly with others. The challenge lies in reconciling the trauma of fake love with the human need for connection, rebuilding trust without surrendering discernment, and learning to differentiate between authentic affection and hollow words. It is a delicate balance, requiring both reflection and emotional resilience. However, within this pain lies the potential for growth. The heartbreak of fake love, though intense, teaches profound lessons about authenticity, emotional intelligence, and boundaries. It highlights the importance of observing actions as well as words, of listening to intuition, and of valuing consistency and integrity in relationships. The pain becomes a catalyst for developing discernment, self-respect, and emotional maturity. It reinforces the need to prioritize one's own well-being while navigating the complex landscape of human connection. Over time, the experience of fake love can lead to a deeper understanding of what genuine love requires, equipping the heart to recognize authenticity and avoid repeating patterns of deception. Ultimately, the pain of realizing fake love is an unavoidable but transformative aspect of human experience. It is intense because it touches the core of trust, vulnerability, and hope, yet it also offers clarity, self-awareness, and the foundation for healthier, more authentic connections in the future. Understanding this pain, feeling it fully, and learning from it allows the heart to emerge wiser, more resilient, and more attuned to the genuine love that is possible when words and actions align. Experiencing fake love, while painful, often becomes a powerful teacher in the journey toward emotional maturity and self-awareness. Growth and discernment are the ultimate outcomes of having navigated a relationship where words were empty and intentions were misleading. Fake love forces one to confront uncomfortable truths about human behavior, vulnerability, and the nature of connection. It demands reflection, introspection, and an honest evaluation of one's own emotional patterns, choices, and boundaries. Through this process, the heart begins to recognize the difference between superficial affection and genuine care, between performance and authenticity. Growth does not erase the pain of deception, but it equips the individual with the tools to identify, understand, and respond to authentic love in the future. It cultivates emotional resilience and strengthens the capacity to navigate relationships with both wisdom and openness. One of the most significant lessons from encountering fake love is the importance of discernment. When someone has experienced deception, the heart becomes more attuned to subtle cues that indicate authenticity or insincerity. Actions begin to speak louder than words, and the ability to read between the lines improves. In this way, past experiences serve as a kind of emotional education, teaching the individual to recognize patterns of manipulation, inconsistency, or performative affection. This discernment is not about cynicism or suspicion, but about developing a refined understanding of human behavior and learning to prioritize relationships that demonstrate integrity, reliability, and genuine emotional investment. The lessons of fake love sharpen emotional intelligence and cultivate the capacity to distinguish between what is real and what is an illusion. Another critical aspect of growth is the development of boundaries. Fake love often exploits vulnerability, blurring the lines of emotional, physical, or psychological safety. In the aftermath, individuals typically gain a clearer understanding of their own limits and what is acceptable in a relationship. This awareness leads to stronger boundaries, which are essential for protecting emotional well-being and fostering healthy connections. By understanding where one's needs, values, and expectations intersect, the heart can engage in relationships without sacrificing self-respect or tolerating manipulation. Boundaries serve not only as protective measures, but also as a declaration of self-worth, signaling to oneself and others that authentic love requires mutual respect, accountability, and consideration. Self-reflection also plays a central role in the growth that follows fake love. Processing the experience involves examining not only the actions of the other person, but also one's own responses, choices, and vulnerabilities. Questions naturally arise. What drew me to this person? What patterns of thought or emotion allowed me to invest in words without substance? How can I recognize similar dynamics earlier in the future? These reflections are often difficult because they require confronting one's own susceptibility, hope, and perhaps denial, but they ultimately lead to a more grounded and resilient understanding of love. Growth, in this context, is both an inward and outward journey, combining self-awareness with the ability to navigate interpersonal relationships more wisely. Experiencing fake love also teaches the value of patience and timing in emotional connection. Often, the eagerness to believe in love, combined with the human desire for companionship, can obscure judgment. Learning from these experiences helps individuals appreciate that authentic love cannot be rushed or manufactured through words alone. It requires consistency, effort, and alignment between intention and action. Growth emerges from recognizing that the depth and sincerity of love are revealed not in grandiose declarations or fleeting gestures, but in everyday acts of care, reliability, and emotional presence. This understanding informs future relationships, allowing one to approach love with clarity, expectation, and a healthy balance of heart and mind. Moreover, the lessons of fake love foster self-respect and empowerment. Understanding that one has been deceived does not diminish personal worth. Rather, It strengthens the commitment to seek relationships that honor individuality and emotional needs. Individuals who have experienced fake love often emerge with a heightened sense of their own value, unwilling to settle for affection that is performative or conditional. This empowerment extends beyond romantic relationships, influencing friendships, family dynamics, and professional interactions by establishing a standard of authenticity and mutual respect. The pain of fake love transforms into a guide, showing the heart that genuine connection is possible, but only when honesty, integrity, and consistency are present. Finally, growth and discernment from fake love involve cultivating emotional resilience and hope. While the experience may leave scars, it also builds the capacity to recover, learn, and engage with love without naivety. Past deception becomes a source of wisdom rather than a reason for cynicism. The heart learns to balance openness with caution, trust with verification, and hope with critical awareness. This resilience ensures that future experiences of love are approached with clarity, courage, and an understanding that authenticity is not optional but essential. Fake love, despite its pain, becomes a teacher, showing the way to deeper, more meaningful, and genuinely reciprocal connections. In the journey of encountering fake love, the heart endures confusion, betrayal, and profound pain, yet within that suffering lies the seed of wisdom and growth. Fake love teaches the essential truth that words alone cannot define connection. Actions, consistency, and genuine care are the true measure of affection. It exposes the dangers of self-deception, emotional manipulation, and misplaced trust, forcing the heart to confront both the imperfections of others and the vulnerabilities within itself. But through this confrontation comes discernment, strengthened boundaries, and the clarity to recognize authenticity when it appears. The experience, though painful, becomes a guide, teaching the value of integrity, self-respect, and resilience. Ultimately, surviving fake love transforms the heart, not by closing it off, but by equipping it to seek and embrace love that is real, reciprocal, and enduring, honoring both the depth of human connection and the worth of one's own soul.